Okay, folks, so here is what we're up to today. Pokemon Colosseum has a really beautiful looking battle system, but the animations take forever. And there's this conversation that's going on about Pokemon that the newer games have bad animation, and that the older games from 2 decades ago, like Colosseum and XD and Pokemon Battle Revolution, have so much better animations that it's and that the modern games are really garbage by comparison. And that it's Game Freak's fault, and that they aren't trying enough, and that Pokemon's being lazy. And frankly, I don't think Pokemon's being lazy. I think they're being pressured into moving a game every year, and so they have to cut as many corners as they can. And they have to overwork their staff, and they have to underpay their staff, and it's a bad time, and who could imagine that late-stage capitalism could cause something as terrible as this? The thing about the animation conversation, though, if you take out the economics portion, is that I think I actually do agree with the Colosseum and XD guys, but only 50%. Because although the animations are prettier, they also are way slower. And part of that is because it's double battles. But the bigger part is that there's just a lot of text inefficiencies there's a lot of text management inefficiencies in the way they run the battles on the engine that's there. And so that is a huge problem that luckily is solvable while salvaging the beautiful animations. And I think is a universal fix that would go a long way in making Colosseum mods or XD mods more playable. And the goal with this video is to show what a universal fix for these mods, for these games, could look like, and how much it could actually shave off of each battle. And what battle styles you could encourage players to use without frustrating them, right? So, without frustrating them with how long the animations are. So, let's take a look. The video I'm using to look at this is from Kapunug's archive. Super appreciate it. My capture card on my PC works. The graphics card on my PC doesn't work, so I can't capture my own footage right now. But if I get the chance to, I might remake this video. If not, whatever. So let's go piece by piece. So at the beginning of each battle, the camera... Oh, I retracted this one. Okay, I'll cut that out in post. Okay. So trainers send out their Pokemon individually. There isn't a unique entrance animation for each of them, so I don't think that much would be lost if the Pokemon appeared simultaneously on each side. So how much time does this actually save? And so I crunched the numbers. The camera sending out each Pokemon lasts about 3 seconds and 7 frames. So these games run at 30 frames per second. So each of these send out animations is about 97 frames long. And so if you send Pokemon on each side out at the same time, you save 97 frames per your guys who send out and your enemies' guys who get sent out. So that's a total of about 6.5 seconds. That's a pretty good save. And it's just going to add up, and that adds up with every battle, right? Every battle is a double battle. And so that's compounds itself on every battle. So all of these, it might seem like a little bit when we get to the end and I'm like, here's the grand total for the whole game, for the whole battle. But if Colosseum has like 100 battles, it's going to add up a lot over the course of the game, right? And it's going to really matter by the time the game is done. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is text displays. So this is a big one that I don't see a lot of people talking about. I don't see a lot of people talking about text inefficiencies in general. But this one in particular, I feel, is egregious in these games. And it's that the text plays before the animation plays. And if you showed the text on screen for so-and-so does such and such while the animation is playing, you cut out a lot of time. And so I crunched the numbers. So it is about 1.15, so a second and then 15 frames, so a second and a half of text display per attack. And so I went through, counted all the attacks in this video, and 27 attacks are thrown out. So it's 45 frames per attack, so 27 by 45 is 1,215 frames, which is about 40 and a half seconds. Okay, that is a lot that we can just shave off pretty cleanly. Nice alundo. Okay, next thing. Knockback from attacks. So this one's a little bit more Pokemon to Pokemon specific. The metric and move to move specific. The metric I used to measure this was when the animation for the attack is done playing on the receiving on the side of the Pokemon receiving the attack. Add 15 frames to that, and then cut out everything else. Have the rest of the return to their original position frame play in the background of other attacks and whatnot. But remove that one piece. So I got wildly different numbers on these. For Gligar, Sandshrew, and Cacnea, it was around a second and then 20 frames. So Gligar was a second, 17. I'll put the graph up on the screen. But then for Alzamarill, Sunflower, and Nosepass, it was closer to like a full 2 seconds. And like in Sunflower's case, almost 3 seconds. So then I multiplied those frame counts by the number of times the given Pokemon was hit, added those up, and we got 40.7 seconds. Also, gotta say, major props to Kapunug's Archives strategy during this fight, using never miss moves. Genius play. Absolute genius play. Justy is the worst to fight. Oh my goodness. Spam double team and bring Pokemon with Sand Veil. Absolutely diabolical. What a schmuck. Okay. So, next inefficiency. When Pokemon are confused, the game will usually display a heads-up message. For instance, Charizard is confused, and then say whether or not they hit themselves in confusion. This should be fixed to give the Pokemon a status condition like heads up on their little icon, similarly to poison or paralysis. And during their turn, it will just say they hit themselves in confusion and leave it at that. You don't need to be like, they're confused, and then say, oh, they hit themselves in confusion. Just give the player a all the time heads up, which is a theme in these. A lot of this is do it an all the time heads up type of deal. So, Cacnea gets this heads up message 4 times because it gets confused by Umbreon. and each time this happens, it's 2 seconds long, and 2 seconds and 6 frames. So about 66 frames. So that by 4 is 264 frames, so 8.8 seconds. Okay. Of like nothing. Like that's nothing. That's savable time, right? Well, okay. So the next one we're gonna go, and this is a big one. This is a humongous one. Let's talk about weather effects. Weather is one of the coolest mechanics in Pokemon. Rain teams in Gen 5, ludicrous, but also really fun. Hot take, Weather Wars, bussin' the tables with how cool they are, my man. And Sandstorm is one of the coolest ones ever, because like, does damage, but not to everybody, but also makes rock type special defense higher. That's what I'm talking about, baby. Oh yeah. So, Sandstorm. So there's two things that happen with Sandstorm. One of them is universal for all weather. One of them is unique to Sandstorm and Hail. So all weather conditions, at the end of the turn, you get a little update on whether or not the weather is still there. How nice. That shouldn't exist. The reason it exists is because weather isn't always visible on the screen. And so what happens is it says the sandstorm is brewing, and it does a pan around of the screen in a wide shot. And it lets the player know that the sandstorm is still brewing, and it's going to hit their guys at the end of the turn. It happens at the end of every turn, and it lasts 62 frames. And in this battle, I have it 4 times. So that's 8.27 seconds. Wow. Very nice. Very nice. And you can just cut that off. You do have to remake the weather animation from scratch, because like most of the move animations in this game, the weather animations are 2D images that have been overlaid to face the camera in a special way, and so they've been designed to only work from certain camera angles. So you can't have them on the screen at all time. So in order to actually fix this problem with Sandstorm, and Rain, and Sun, and Hail, you would need to completely reanimate this effect, which makes it a little bit more involved than just a universal fix, because then it's also aesthetically changing how the game looks. And if one of the big reasons people like these games is because of how they look, an aesthetic change like that actually kind of matters a lot. So that's something to keep in mind. So the other thing is specific to Hail and Sandstorm, and it's being buffeted by the weather effect. So let's take a look at this. Okay, so sandstorm damage is done differently to each, takes a different amount of time for each Pokemon that's affected, because they all have different amounts of time for their jump back, and then for their knockback, and then return to the position they were in before animations. So for Espeon, it's going to be 115 frames. Umbreon, it's going to be 153 frames, and for Sunflora, it's going to be 125 frames. And since Sunflora dies about halfway in the early parts of the fight, it only gets hit by Sandstorm twice. So there are 10 instances of this sort of Sandstorm thing happening, and Sandstorm happens in total 4 times. So the way we're going to calculate this is we're going to multiply each of the frame counts by the number of occurrences per Pokemon, and then we're going to subtract the minimum number of frames by the minimum number of occurrences of Sandstorm. So that would be Espeon's 115 frames of knockback times 4 the total number of times Sandstorm occurs. and we're going to find the difference between that and the total that we got when all of them are shown individually. And that's going to give us a amount we can shave off of 852 frames, or about 28.4 seconds. Okay. So the reason we're using this kind of convoluted method is because you do have to show that the Pokemon get hit by Sandstorm at the end of every turn. It just doesn't have to take as long as it does, right? And so we're trying to find the minimum amount for the minimum amount of animation that we have to show. And so Espeon is the lowest amount of animation time, which works good, but also appears the most often. And so it's every time Sandstorm hits, it also happens to hit Espeon. If it didn't happen to hit Espeon, you would go with the lowest amount per Pokemon per turn. So like if Espeon had fainted, but Sunflora was still on the field, you'd have one of those be Sunflora's number, 120, right? Hope that makes sense. Next one, spread moves. Yeesh. So we only have one spread move, Swift, in this battle. And typically you'll see a lot more variety. So you'll see moves like Earthquake or Explosion, which hit 3 targets. An Explosion actually kills the self, so you would have to see that full knockout animation play as well. But Swift is pretty manageable. It takes 3 seconds and 20 frames to hit each target. And since it was used twice, it's going to be 4 targets total. And each of those attacks is about 110 frames. So that's 440 frames. But since you do need the attack to play it all, and let's say you're displaying it in a wide shot, we'll just cut that in half, make that 220 frames, and that's about 7.3 seconds. And of course, with moves like Earthquake or Explosion, you're going to attack on some extra time for the ally Pokemon that gets hit, and in Explosion's case, the user also fainting. Okay, so EXP. Every time a Pokemon is knocked out, the game stops and shows each Pokemon gain a EXP individually. Oh my goodness. Is this relevant to the game? Is this relevant to the battle? I don't think so. Show it at the end. Don't show it at all. Show it in the summary of the guy. Just have the EXP bar have gone up. That works just fine. So, like, what are we doing with this information? So, every time it goes up, it's about a minute 17 for EXP going up. It would, of course, vary based on the amount of EXP gained. In this battle, it's not a lot, but like for Plusle, fighting, I don't know, some beefy guy with the EXP share, gets double EXP bonus because it was traded. Fighting Dakeem, knock out a guy, oh my goodness, you're going to be there for an hour. Terrible. But in this case, 18.8 seconds. Okay, that's a lot. It's a lot of seconds to just be watching EXP go up. That's all I'm saying. It's all I'm saying. So, the next one is the level up. Level up, more like schmevel up. Alright? Alright. So, when they level up, it also stops the game. And I was going to originally do these together, but it's really hard to measure them together because then, whatever. When you level up, it also stops the game for about 2 minutes, 2 seconds, and 20-ish frames. And it happened once for Umbreon and once for Espeon, and so it's about 5.4 seconds. And so you add all these up, and you get 164.67 seconds, which is about 2 minutes and 45 seconds. And so it's like no wonder these matches feel so slow. And I will admit, most matches, you can say it's just 2 minutes slower, because it's just a relative 2 minutes slower, because most matches don't have weather and also sandstorm being that weather, right? And this was like a pretty long battle to begin with. Like Jesty has 6 Pokemon, right? So it is a longer battle regardless. It's 7 minutes and 36 seconds. And if you take off the sandstorm time, which isn't in most battles, then it's about 7 minutes. And so 2 minutes and 8 seconds of that are nothing. They're superfluous. And so you got a 4 minute, 51 second battle that's bloated by a little less than a third of its length. Like that's crazy, right? And you compound that for every battle, like a third of every battle's length is completely redundant. That's a huge deal. And there's a lot more inefficiencies like this in Colosseum that could be fixed with a universal fix. This isn't even talking about like shadow Pokemon going into hyper mode. This isn't mentioning multi-hit attacks. This isn't mentioning like 2 Pokemon getting knocked out at the same time. Like there's a lot of junk in just like the battle animation system, which could be ironed out, and it would speed up the game in a pretty massive way. I feel like you can maybe even shave an hour off the game, start to finish, just by modifying how animations play, which would be ludicrous, right? And there are other things that slow the game down that I want to that I'm going to take a look at in later videos. One of them is the running back and forth between PCs, right? Like the efficient sizing, the fun out of the game, and so like you have to go back to the PC every time. That's whatever. That's for a different video. But yeah, there you go. I'm gonna sort out a side by side where I have a video where it's like nice and edited and fixed, and a video where it's not. And they'll be side by side, so you can compare and contrast how fast the thing goes without it and how fast it goes with it. And someday I will make a universal fix that people can just plug into their games and shave off some time from their playthroughs, so they don't have to waste their life watching dumb animations when all they want to do is steal mines and beat up baddies. You know what I'm saying? All right, there you go. That's all I have to say. Talk to you later, alligator, gladiator. Bye bye.